Welcome to the library. Let's go see a show.
You're a bad piece of meat and you must be a pirate. How many of you have seen the movie Pirates of the Caribbean? Okay, that's kind of a fairy story about pirates, and that's a good thing, a good way to look at them. They're just kind of fairy stories in some way. But this one is called Edward and the Pirates. Edward and the Pirates. Edward was a little boy.
I know this story.
Good. Once Edward learned to read, there was no stopping him. He would read cereal boxes at the breakfast table. He would read the seed catalogs even though they arrived in the dead of winter. Please do not do that. Just sit down. He read the words on the statue in the town square. He read books, all kinds of books. He liked stories of adventure. When he read about Admiral Perry racing by dog sled to the North Pole, Edward was with him. When he read about the bold outlaw Robin Hood, Edward was the one who rescued him from Sheriff John. When he read about Joan of Arc, it was Edward who carried her shield and protected her from the battle axe. Sometimes, what Edward read about seemed to become real. When he was reading a book about dinosaurs, he saw one in the backyard. Ooh. Next to his house, the place that Edward liked to read the best was the library. The library. He had his own library card and he could borrow all the books that he could carry home. One day, Edward found a book lying on the library shelf. It was called Lost Pirate Treasure. He sat down and he began to read. Some pirate treasure has never been found. Edward, now who do you see in this picture? The pictures are kind of dark, but who's there besides Edward? Lots of pirates. There's one, there's one, and there's one, there's one. See all those people? Those are all pirates. Now go back and sit down. Edward was still reading about the lost pirate treasure when he felt someone tap him on the shoulder. It was the librarian telling him it was time to go home. So Edward checked out the book about lost pirate treasure and he went home. That night, Edward went to bed early so he could read his book. When the pirate ship was being tossed about on stormy seas, it was Edward who bravely steered the ship. Sometime in the night, in the middle of the night, Edward felt his bed being bumped. He sat up and looked around, and to his astonishment, his room was full of pirates. "We've come for that book," said the captain of the pirates. We think it tells us where our treasure is buried." "But I can't give it to you," said Edward. "It's a library book. It's checked out in my name. I have to take it back." The pirates begged him, but Edward would not change his mind. He folded his arms around the book and shook his head no. They even promised him a share in the treasure. That looks like a pretty good treasure, doesn't it? If he would just give them the book. Stay put, Kate. Stay put. You're going out that way. Okay. "You're going to have to walk the plank," said the pirates. That's pretty scary. Finally, Edward stood firm. Finally, one of the pirates drew his sword and waved it over Edward's head. "Hand it over," he roared. But Edward wouldn't budge. "You better be quiet," he said, "or you'll wake up my parents." Edward had just finished saying that when the door opened and a knight on a white charger galloped into his room. It was his mother. She was dressed in a suit of shining armor and carrying a lance. She pinned the sword-waving pirate to the wall. But then the other pirates drew their swords and began to attack them. Then suddenly a flurry of arrows came in the front door, in the door of Edward's room. It was his father. His father looks like Robin Hood, doesn't he? "Back off," he commanded the pirates. "Go stand in the corner." And the pirates did as they were told. Edward felt sorry for the pirates. "They only came because they wanted to read the book," he said. "I don't think they meant any harm." Edward handed the book to the pirates. The head pirate held it open while the others huddled close around him. After a few minutes, the pirates gave the book back to Edward. "It's of no use to us," he said. "We can't read it." "You can't read it?" "No," said the pirates. "Pirates don't learn to read." "Well," said Edward, "I'll read it to you, if that's all right with my mom and dad." "Just don't stay up too late," said his mother. "And close the window when you leave," said his father. As his mother and father left the room, Edward began to read the book to the pirates. Some pirate treasure has never been found. You wouldn't want to be a pirate. Nope. If you don't get to learn to read, you do not want to be a pirate. It wouldn't be any fun if you couldn't read. Edward could read. That's right. It's very important.
Avast, ye mateys! The pirates invade the Wiseburn after this next story.
This is a very silly pirate story. In fact, this is a story about a lady I really like, okay? See if you like her at the end. This is a lady I really like. The name of this story is The Horrendous Hullabaloo. What is horrendous? Horrendous means really, really awful. And what is a hullabaloo? A hullabaloo is a really loud, noisy sort of party thing. So a really, really, really awfully loud, horrible, loud party doesn't sound so bad, does it? Once upon a time, there was a cheerful old lady named Aunt Polly. She kept house for her nephew, Peregrine the pirate. Every morning, she put on her pirate pinafore, poured out Peregrine's ration of rum, picked up his socks, and gotta pay attention. Poured out his ration of rum and petted his parrot. She worked all day, day in, day out, keeping everything shipshape. Meanwhile, her pirate nephew went to parties every night, and he never once asked his aunt or his parrot to go with him. When his aunt said she'd like to go too, Peregrine the pirate replied, "Oh, no, you wouldn't like it, Aunt Polly. The hullabaloo is horrendous." "But I like horrendous hullabaloos," said Aunt Polly, "and so does the parrot. When I come home from sea, I want a break from that parrot," said Peregrine. "And if I took my aunt to a party, all the other pirates would laugh at me." "Well," said Aunt Polly, "I'll just have a party of my own." So she got ready. She had no sooner had Peregrine taken off for his night's party than his aunt peeled off her pirate pinafore and put on her patchwork party dress. Say that 3 times fast. 7:30, she called to the pirate. "We'll soon be having a horrendous hullabaloo all of our own." Then she opened the windows and sat waiting for the guests to come. 8:30, said the clock, and the pirate's aunt still waited. 9:30, said the clock, and still no party guests. 10:30, and the food was in danger of burning. No one, it seemed, was brave enough to come to the pirate's house. The pirate's aunt cried. Suddenly the parrot spoke. "I have lots of friends who'll come to your party," he said. "Friends who aren't plunged into panic or petrified by pirates. Friends who would happily help with a hullabaloo." "Well, what are you waiting for?" cried the pirate's aunt. "Go get them." Out the window the parrot flew away while the aunt mopped up her tears and powdered her nose. Almost at once, the night air was filled with flapping and fluttering. The sea swished and sighed. The night breeze smelled of passion fruit, pineapples, and palm trees. In through the open window tumbled the patchwork party guests, all screeching with laughter. They were speckled, they were freckled, they were streaked and striped like rolling rags of rainbow. All the parrots in town had come to Aunt Polly's party. "Come one, come all," said the aunt happily. The parrots clacked loudly, breaking into a spirited sing-song. So loud was that sing-song that the pirates' neighbors rushed out of their houses, prepared for the worst. "What a horrendous hullabaloo!" they cried, and the aunt invited them in to all feast richly on all her party food. And to join her in a wild jig, she was having a wonderful time. When Peregrine the pirate arrived home later that night, his house was still ringing with leftover echoes from the horrendous hullabaloo. The air smelled strongly of the party food, and the floor was covered in parrot feathers. "Aunt," he said crossly, "come and clean up this house." But there was no one at home, for at that very moment his aunt and the parrots were stealing away on Peregrine's own pirate ship. Over the moonlit sea she was sailing, with parrots perched all over her, making a horrendous hullabaloo. As they sailed off in search of passion fruit, pineapples, and palm trees, it was impossible to tell where the aunt left off and the parrots began. They've sort of turned into her dress, haven't they? So, left all alone at home, with a grunt and a groan, Peregrine put on the pirate pinafore and tidied up for himself. That's the end of that story. We're going to make pirates. So the first thing you want to do is make his face.
Arg! Avast, you landlubbers! So the pirates invaded the Wiseburn Library, pillaging and plundering. Let's watch the ensuing fun. Ha ha!